southern and central Appalachian mountains have seen a real increase in bear populations. So it's definitely an animal I spend a lot of time with, but also, you know, I just find a lot of folks have misinformation about bears, and also how we respond and how we deal with conflicts and problems with bears. Also what the agency's responsibilities are, as well as what the public's responsibilities are with respect to bears too. So again, I thank you for having me. I never get tired of talking about bears. Even when the phone is just ringing constantly, I still get excited about it. And I thought, you know, tonight, you know, I work in Virginia. I'm based in Wise, Virginia. I have 6 counties that I cover, so a pretty big area, but I don't deal with just bears. I have elk in my district that I work with, certainly deer, turkey, quail, you name it. Just about anything that is above the ground, not aquatic or fisheries, I deal with in my district. For those of you who are in Kentucky, you have bear specialists in your area, and I want to try to make sure, I think a lot of the content of my talk tonight will be universal for everybody. It's going to be about preventing and avoiding conflicts with bears, which is pretty universal, but there are some differences certainly in, for example, our hunting seasons and how we structure those, about how we respond to conflicts and so on. So I'm going to try to make sure that I distinguish between the two for those of you that are in Kentucky, because there are some differences. But again, when you are having issues with bears, you're going to hear a lot of the same advice, a lot of the same response and stuff from Kentucky as you would from Virginia. But again, I'll try to make that distinction if it's something unique to Virginia or a little bit different from those of you in Kentucky. So I get this question all the time. Why do we have so many bears? What is going on? You know, Seth, are you bringing these bears and just turning them loose? And that is not the case at all. Largely, you know, we just have fantastic bear habitat. A lot of the reclaimed mine lands that we have in the region are early successional habitat. So we have a lot of grasses and sedges and clovers that have been planted. And a lot of that's really, you know, that's what bears really like in the spring, especially. We have a lot of berry producing shrubs that grow on those reclaimed mine lands, from autumn olives that we planted to blackberry, raspberry. I've seen chokecherry. So there's just fantastic bear habitat. We also have, at least in Virginia here, we have the National Forest, the George Washington Jefferson National Forest, and there's a lot of mature forests that produce a lot of hard mast, and that hard mast being, you know, acorns from oak trees, beech, hickory, and so on. So we really have just a mosaic of fantastic and very productive bear habitat here. Also, and this is true for Kentucky as well, for years we didn't have any bears. So we didn't have really a bear season in this part of the country because we didn't have any bears. They had been hunted out years ago, but those hunting restrictions have worked. And over time, our population has really increased. So now, especially here in Virginia, we have offered more and more hunting opportunity to help control and manage bear population numbers. But another thing, and I really want to emphasize this, is that there are a lot of human attractants on the landscape. The garbage, the fruit trees, the bird feeders, pet food, livestock feed, all those things that bears find and get into, they lose their fear, and that just makes bears more visible. So we're seeing bears, not so much because there's a huge increase in the population, which there has been, but it's also about bear behavior. You know, bears lose their fear, that makes them way more visible. And also, you know, in those years that we have no berries or no acorns, earlier we were talking about the frost. We had some late frost and nasty weather here, and that affects the berry and acorn crops every year. And we could have a poor natural food year this year. I'm hoping not. I'm knocking on wood, hoping that's not the case and that bears stay wild and find natural foods. But this year might be one of those years where bears are certainly seeking out easy meals around homes and businesses. And again, this is all natural population growth. It is true that back in the mid-90s, I think is when it ended, that we did, my agency here in Virginia, we did relocate some bears to the National Forest up in Wise County on High Knob, for those of you familiar with this area. But that ended, you know, mid to late 90s. Those bears were mostly males and had a negligible effect on the population growth. So all this is all natural population growth for the most part. And again, I stress that's Kentucky, Tennessee, everybody's experienced that same population growth and expansion the last 25 or 30 years or so. You guys still with me?
Yeah, we mute everybody so that it doesn't interrupt you.
Okay, sounds good. So I wanted to, this isn't, as fun and interesting maybe as some other things about bears, but I do want to mention that we have a bear management plan. And, a lot of folks think we just trap and release bears or do things willy-nilly with our hunting regulations and so on. And that's just not how it works. We see black bears as a natural resource, the same as any other wildlife species. And that requires the public's input. We are here as wildlife agencies to offer the scientific expertise and the technical expertise to manage wildlife, but it's up to the public to set those population goals and objectives. So when we go through our management plan process, and we just finished one for elk a few years ago, we've got the bear plan, we've got a deer management plan, the turkey, I think maybe a trout management plan. So it's crucial that we get the public's input on this stuff, especially an animal as potentially controversial as bears are. It's really crucial to capture what it is the public wants. So we have these management plans, and the one that we have in place now, we started about 2010, 2011, and it's coming due. So we will now we're starting the process to review the management plan. We will have public comment periods. We will have stakeholder meetings. And by that, I mean, there'll be a group of beekeepers from around the state that will talk and discuss about bear management issues. There will be hunter groups that discuss and talk about bear management in the state. There might be a group of folks from nonprofits or environmental groups that have interest in bear management, and they'll talk about things. And we just really try to get the best pulse that we can from the public, the general public as well, everybody. We want everybody represented and renew that. And we know, after 10 years, bear populations change, human populations change, attitudes change about bears in this case. So it's important that we revisit that, and we're getting ready to do that now. But if you look on the map here, the last time we worked with the public, we asked about population levels, and through all the public comment periods, the surveys, the stakeholder groups, the majority, not everybody, but the majority of the folks in the white areas said, you know what, we're good. Leave our population as it is. Don't let it grow anymore. The folks in the green areas actually said, you know what, we'd like to see more bears on the landscape. So those types of things really inform how we manage bears. And again, we're getting ready to renew and go through the planning process again. And I have a feeling, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling we're going to be asked to reduce the population and put more pressure on the bear population to manage it within social or public tolerance. So be looking for that. Those of you that want to comment, have interest in bears and bear management, be watching for that in the press. You will see that in newspapers, on the news, online, at our website, and so on. And we encourage you to comment and engage on it. So we have public goals, and main part of that was to stabilize throughout the state. But here we continue to have, in Wise, Dickinson, Buchanan especially, we continue to have to add some more hunting opportunity. And in 2017, we added a 3-day season, an early season. Early because we wanted to try to target more females. We wanted to harvest more females to help stabilize the population. And then also we added a town and city season this last go round. And what that does basically is if the town or city allows some level of hunting, let's say maybe just archery hunting, we now have a much longer bear season in those areas where weapons are allowed. We also add an additional week of rifle season in my 6 counties, and that made it pretty much consistent with all the counties west of the Blue Ridge here in Virginia. We all have the same and we have 14 weeks of hunting season for bears. I know those of you in Kentucky are probably, your jaw's probably on the ground, because you guys have a much more restrictive and conservative hunting regime there in Kentucky. And that's for good reason. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the difference is here, Virginia has always had bears. We've always had remnant populations of bears, whereas Kentucky really, for years and years and years did not have any bears hardly at all, except what probably came in from West Virginia or Virginia. But we've always had bears, and we'll see some more of that here. But we have a 14-week hunting season. We have the early 3-day season that I mentioned. And archery is 6 weeks. We have a lot of harvest and interest in hunting bears during the archery season. You can go to Walmart for $200. You can get a crossbow that will kill a bear or deer. So a lot of folks are getting into crossbow hunting during the archery season. We have a 1-week muzzleloader season, and we have, I believe, 5 or 6 weeks of rifle season later in the season. So we have a pretty liberal, open bear hunting season here in the state of Virginia. And that's not the case in Kentucky. There's a quota system, if I understand correctly, and it's much more restrictive. But again, we've got a lot more bears. We've always had bears and so on. So there's some big differences. Kill permits. Now, for those of you that are commercial ag producers, we do issue kill permits outside of the hunting season. If it's during hunting season, we'll encourage you to allow hunting on your property. But kill permits, with those, if you can show, if you're a commercial ag producer and you can show damage done by bears to myself or a game warden, the game wardens will issue you a kill permit. And at that point, gloves are off. You can hunt at night, whatever you need to do to kill the bear that's causing the problem, or bears, whatever it is, you can get a kill permit for. But that does not prevent the damage from the next bear, which we'll talk about shortly. And I mentioned to you the hunting in town and city limits. We really expanded the opportunities there for those towns and cities that do allow weapons discharge in their jurisdiction. So quite a big difference from those of you in Kentucky in terms of hunting seasons. So we talked about managing bear numbers. Let's talk about bear behavior and bear conflicts. So garbage, the same as it is in Kentucky. Garbage is the #1 reason I get calls about bears. There's a bear in my garbage and so on, or my dumpster. Certainly bird feeders, pet food on porches, livestock feed and chickens to a degree. That's kind of becoming more of an issue. A lot more folks, I think, are getting chickens and doing backyard chickens again. Same thing with bees. A lot more folks are getting into bees and beehives, even on a small scale in their yard. So that's kind of a growing area for us in terms of working with the public and beekeepers. So in Virginia, what do? You got a bear in your garbage, you've got a bear, maybe you're a commercial honey producer and you've got bear issues. Who do you call? So we have a Virginia Wildlife Conflict Helpline. We've had that in place since, I believe, 2013. And those folks, they answer thousands of calls about bears alone, let alone all the other species. They get the squirrel in the attic or the alligator in my swimming pool call, the same as they do with bears. But they answer a lot of calls. They're really, really talented, very knowledgeable folks and are helpful. And we encourage everybody to call them. A lot of times, the usual bear in the garbage call, that's something that typically can be handled over the phone to secure the attractant or remove the garbage. If it's something that's a little more pressing or something that needs a field follow-up or needs some action in the field, the helpline folks will contact either myself or a game warden and have us go out and do a site visit. But a lot of the bear calls we get are typically handled over the phone. I think Kentucky, you'll probably see a little more hands-on, a little more in the field response than maybe you would in Virginia. And I think that has to do a lot with the number of bears overall. And for example, Kentucky has bear specialists. We don't have that here. So that's an added benefit to you. But again, if you're a residential, just a John Q. Public or a commercial ag producer, let's say you're a commercial honey producer, maybe you've got peanuts in the Piedmont, or you're anything like that, any commercial agriculture, you know, that is the number to call, and those are the folks to start with, and they'll get the process rolling. If there needs to be follow-up, or if you need a kill permit issued, that's the number to call. Another question that I should point out is that we get a lot is, well, what does it mean to be commercial? What if I sell 3 or 20 jars, you know, at my farmer's market, or to my family or friends or neighbors, or have just a little sign in front of my house to sell honey or eggs or something like that? Does that make me commercial? Well, technically, yes, you would be considered commercial, but I think a lot of the game wardens, depending on who you talk to and how they interpret the law, it might be that they ask you, well, do you include the income from that in your taxes? Or if you're a honey producer, do you have the label required by the state of Virginia on your jars? So it's a little different. There's some gray areas there, and I've used the honey example because there's some gray areas that we need to work on, and we're going to be doing that to try to clarify things and try to ramp up and be a little more clear with honey producers, and have some sort of a program specific to the honey producers. And I think that'll be really helpful and hopefully well received. So the bear and the garbage. We always tell folks to put garbage out the morning of pickup. Most of the towns, cities, and even some of the counties in my 6-county district have some sort of curbside pickup. Not all of them do, but most of them do. Some of them even offer service twice a week. And I know right now this is something that's timely. You know, a lot of us are at home, we're out of work, kids are at home from school, or were, I guess it's sort of the end of the school year now, or would be. But we're producing more garbage at home because of the pandemic. And so that has been a real issue. A lot of folks are like, you know, there's only so much garbage I can keep in my house before it stinks us out of house and home. So there's been more issues, I think, related to that, because again, I think everybody's producing more garbage at home. So it's been an issue. But what I can say is, for my areas, a lot of the counties have some sort of convenience center or dump site that are distributed throughout the counties. And I know it's a pain, and I know it's not fun, and it's another step, another thing we have to think about. But if you don't want to bear, I really encourage folks to haul that excess garbage off. If you can't, you know, just put it out the morning of pickup. And we always tell folks to try to store it in a sturdy structure, something, not just any old rickety outbuilding, but something that's solid, a garage, a basement, a really sturdy barn, that sort of place, until the day of pickup, or until you can haul it off. A lot of folks do this. You can see this bear climbing in this truck. A lot of folks will store garbage in the back of their truck. Maybe they don't have curbside pickup, but they haul their garbage off to the dump sites. So what they're doing is just creating a huge buffet for that bear. And they're also teaching that bear that every vehicle is now a source of food. So even if you remove your garbage, now the bear's going to go to your neighbors. And let's say your neighbor leaves their window cracked a little bit. Maybe there's some jerky or peanuts or something in the console. This picture down on the bottom, you know, just shows you what a bear can do. They break into vehicles, or can. I haven't had too many. But they really can cause a lot of damage to vehicles. So we really discourage folks from storing garbage in the back of the pickup. A lot of, you know, folks haul stuff off to the county dump, or maybe to the job site where there's a dumpster, that sort of thing. But you're just asking for it. You're asking for your truck to get scratched. You're teaching that bear some really bad behavior that can result in somebody, if not you, getting your car totaled. So we really discourage that. Electric fence works great. Hopefully my videos will work and we can show you some examples of that. I have a lot of folks that try bungee straps, bungee cords, ammonia, bleach, even their own urine, mothballs. If that works for you, great. We don't recommend it. We've not seen that kind of stuff work. Bears smell right through some of those other smells. The straps and bungees, bears can just rip that stuff right off. It just doesn't, not a really good deterrent. But if it works for you, great, go for it. So this is specific to Virginia, and I'm going to read this, so bear with me. But it shall be unlawful for any person to place, distribute, or allow the placement of food, minerals, carrion, trash, or similar substances to feed or attract bear. Nor upon notification by department personnel shall any person continue to place, distribute, or allow the placement of any food, mineral, carrion, trash, or similar substances for any purpose if the placement of these materials results in the presence of bear. So basically what that says is it's illegal to allow bears to get into your garbage, for example. And if the department's been notified about it and we've warned you about it, you can then be ticketed if you don't do anything about it. Now, we rarely have to ticket people because most folks that call about a bear problem, they want the bear to go away. So typically folks comply and follow our recommendations and everything's hunky-dory. But every now and again, we'll have somebody who really digs their heels in the ground, maybe a restaurant whose dumpster is getting dumpster dived and crowds are showing up and all that kind of thing. Sometimes we have to write a written notice and force folks to comply with state law on this. But it's pretty rare, but it does exist. We do take it seriously. We don't want bears to lose their fear and potentially become a safety concern. So we do have laws in the book that we can and do use occasionally. Bear-resistant containers. There's a whole cottage industry of bear-proof containers. You can Google bear-resistant containers and you will see there's tons of them. I purchased one. This is what I have at my house. I got this at Lowe's here in Wise County. It was a little spendy, but I tell you what, it gives me, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to pick up garbage. I don't have to worry about my daughter, my dogs, my cats, my neighbors. I'm not contributing to problems for my neighbors. I just don't have to worry about it, and it works great. We've had it for 2 years. I've never had any issues with it. My wife and I, we saw this bear try to get into it 2 nights in a row. The first fall that we had it, he never got into it. As far as we know, he's never been back. We just don't have the issues, and it's well worth the investment. Clark's Welding in Appalachia. This is a local fabricator. This gentleman has come up with a really slick design. We have a lot of these rear loads, sort of scoop shovel looking dumpsters in our area. And this particular design that he's come up with, and this is the 2nd or 3rd iteration, has like garage door track wheels on it. So you slide this door back and secure it to dump it. A lot of the dumpsters, bear-proof dumpsters and bear-proof lids or whatever that you see out there, they have metal lids that flap and bang around. So a few months of being beaten around by the truck and flapping around all that extra heavy weight, those lids get tweaked and broken. But when you slide this thing back up in these tracks, that door is it really holds still. It's not banging around and flapping around, and you have to chain it back to keep it open. So that really extends the life of these lids. And I've really tried to help push and promote this particular design because it's been working great. It's relatively human proof. It's user friendly. It holds up to the trucks beating them up, and it seems to be bear proof. I've not had any failures to my knowledge. He's had this design about 2 years in the field, and I really keep tabs on it. We've never had a bear get into one unless somebody, of course, leaves the lid open. So really good design. So I've got a video here, and hopefully this shows up for everybody, but this is a video that sort of encapsulates the whole bear-proof container world.
Cities in Colorado and around the nation require bear-proof trash cans and containers, but how do they really know if they really work, if they're bear-proof? It turns out there's actually a sort of trash can bear testing ground in Yellowstone. It's at the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center. Manufacturers send their best bear-proof designs, and bears like Spirit here put them to the test. They try all their favorite methods, including this one right here. They call it the CPR method. They're trying to get into those containers and the coolers, all of course, in front of a group of lucky tourists.
He just kept managing to move that thing around until he just cracked it right open.
And now you know which cooler you might bring with you, huh?
Yeah, the white one.
But what happens when the bear doesn't get the food? He gets madder and madder and madder. Companies pay about $500 for the testing. If the containers survive a 60-minute mauling, they are labeled bear resistant. When the testing started, about 10% received the ratings. Now about 65% pass.
So, I probably should have Mr. Clark send one of his dumpsters out there and get tested, I think. I'd love to do that. I don't know if he'd do that or not, but would be neat to do. Bird feeders, that's a big one right now. I just talked to a lady today, an elderly lady who loves to feed the birds. very upset that her bird feeders have been destroyed. And so we had a good chat about it. But really, we always try to tell people, feed the birds, not the bears. Let's try to hang them up to where a bear can't reach them. Or better yet, wait till December 1st, then start feeding the birds, and then come about April 1st, it's time to bring them in again. The lady today, I think her son, she's going to have him come out and create a hanger system where she can take her bird feeders in at night. And I think that will solve everything for her, that she'll still be able to feed and watch the birds and enjoy them, but not be feeding bears and losing her bird feeders. Pet food, that's another big one. You know, pet food has that real pungent odor to it. There's a lot of calories and a lot of nutrients in there that bears can smell. So a major food reward for bears. And we always tell people, just feed enough that the bears will clean up in one sitting, or that dogs or cats will eat in one sitting, and try not to feed animals outside unless you absolutely have to. And another thing, a lot of folks have screen doors or little screened in porches where they keep, not only do they feed their dog or cat, but they also keep the cat food or dog food. And bears will just claw right through that screen. It's nothing for them to just come right in a screen like that. Property damage. This is something that I deal with a lot in my area, and I'm sure it happens a lot in Kentucky as well. But formaldehyde is in this sort of insulation that you see. And formaldehyde breaks down over time into formic acid, which is also given off by ant nests, which is a major natural food for bears. So every year I have several calls where a bear has torn the underpinning out of a building or a trailer and ripped out the insulation. And that bear is just convinced that there is an ant nest inside there. But there's not. There's nothing in there. It's just the odor of the formaldehyde and the insulation. And this is a horrible thing to respond to for me, because the people are scared to death, and there's tremendous, very costly property damage that insurance does not cover. And there's little I can do. The bear did not get a food reward. So the notion that the bear was going to come back, that we can trap this bear or do anything with it, is next to nil. So it's just a really horrible thing that I have to deal with on occasion, and probably my least favorite conflict or call to respond to is this type of call, because people are scared. There's expensive damage, and there's little I can do about it because the bear's probably long gone. Some more property damage. This lady, right inside the window there is her stove, and she was cooking bacon, and she's convinced the bear wanted her bacon, but I have a feeling it was wanting the stuffing out of her house. Critter Getter. This is a really good tool that I use. I've got a couple of these that I loan out to folks. Not something you want to leave out for a real long time. Bears do become, and other animals for that matter, become accustomed to this, but basically it's a motion activated alarm system. It has the motion sensor, and it has two little beady eyes there on it that flash, and it lets off a god-awful sound. Let's say the bear runs away, gets scared, comes back maybe an hour later, he got his nerve back up again. It will play a different alarm and flash differently. So it mixes it up a little bit, but still, if you just put it up and leave it up for months, it's going to lose its effectiveness. But I put these on porches. Like if a bear's gotten into some pet food on a porch, we'll put that Critter Getter up if the bear comes back the next night. Chicken coops, fruit trees, even for deer, it's a good thing to have. Raccoons, possums, neighbor dogs, neighbors. It'll catch you off guard and scare you if you're not ready for it. It's very loud. Roadkills. We have quite a few roadkills, especially in bad natural food years. We've got Highway 23 and Highway 58, pretty busy 4 lanes that intersect here in Wise County, and we have quite a few roadkills. We had a bear, it's maybe been 2 years ago, that was just enormous. It was huge, and people about got in a fist fight about who was going to take the bear home after this poor lady totaled her car on it. They said it was over 700 pounds. It's very possible it was that big, but like anything on Facebook, the bear grew overnight. The next day it weighed 120 pounds more than it did the day before. So I question that, but it was definitely a huge bear. Bee yards. Electric fencing works great. I've had folks say, well, we've tried that and it didn't work. But that tells me it probably wasn't quite constructed and maintained properly, and probably not hot enough a charger. And I've got some videos that I'll show on that. Same thing for fruit trees. You know, fruit trees and bees both. You know, you spend a lot of money investing in your bees and all your equipment, or years for a small apple tree to grow up enough to where it's starting to produce fruit. And a bear can absolutely kill the tree basically overnight, or wipe you out of your bees overnight. So it always is best to put, invest that little much more to invest in an electric fence. It works great. Here in Wise, we've got some fruit trees, a couple apple trees, and the deer helped me pick up the apples pretty well. But we've never had a bear, as far as we know. We try to keep that picked up, and what we don't, the deer seem to be picking up for us. So here's another video of a bear. These folks had some fruit trees, I think some chickens, certainly garbage, and their grandkids came over every now and again, and they just didn't want to have to worry about it. So they had this existing fence, like a decorative yard fence, and they added a hot wire up top and another hot wire at the bottom, and put up a camera, and Boo Boo showed up, and this is what happened. And that's all it took. Just one time. Here's another. This was in Montana a few years ago, and it narrates what's going on there to read on there, but same kind of thing. And hopefully everybody has their sound on, because this has got some good audio. You can see the mat there on the ground the bear's about to step on. And I think that cub got it there at the end as well. And that's great. This female is teaching her cub that kind of behavior, to come up around houses, to seek out food sources, and it just gets shut down right then. Bear spray is another one. With black bears, we don't really have need to carry bear spray or to think and worry about bear spray. Black bears just don't react to perceived threats like grizzly bears or even polar bears do. So there's not a real need for it, but I do have folks that, they weren't used to having bears. Now they have bears and they're afraid, and they don't feel like they feel safe getting out to garden or to walk their dogs, or, walk around their property and stuff. Maybe they live in a place where they can't have a firearm for protection, or maybe they're disabled or something like that. And bear spray works great in those situations to give folks a sense of safety, a sense that they have something that they can do to defend themselves. And, $40, $50 at Walmart or a sporting goods store, Cabela's, Bass Pro, someplace like that, and you're good to go. And you can use it on people, you can use it on dogs, you name it. It's got other uses, but it is an option, and it does work. And here's a video of a guy using. This is a captive bear situation, but it does work.
At close range in a number of situations.
And hopefully you never climb a tree to get away from a black bear, because they can climb. So don't climb trees, but just another video to show you that black bears do not like bear spray. So this is an issue that I continue to deal with. Things have gotten a little bit better, but this is in Russell County, one of the convenience centers or dump sites that the county managed. It turned into a bear feeding place. This bear weighed about 425 pounds and never lifted a claw to hurt anybody, but we ended up euthanizing this bear just out of an abundance of caution. The lady here was charged obviously with illegal feeding a bear, but also felony child endangerment, because you can't see her in this picture, but there's a young girl, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, sitting behind her, who was also feeding this bear cookies. This site now has got electric fence all the way around it, and has really reduced the bear traffic, and people just don't go there to watch bears anymore. It's a much better, safer situation for everybody. but I still have to deal with feeding. For some reason, Wise County, we have a lot of feeding that goes on, deliberate feeding that is. This is, for those of you in Letcher County, this is Black Mountain up over, 160 that goes over that from Appalachia to Benham and Lynch and on down to Cumberland. Notorious place. Folks load up, hey, let's get the kids, let's go up on the mountain and feed the bears. And they do. And Kentucky and Virginia both, we partner on this a lot. We've ticketed some folks. Unfortunately, we've had to euthanize some bears up there just because they had lost their fear of people and were basically almost climbing in vehicles. So it really presented a danger for folks. So something that we always have to keep working on for whatever reason to keep people from feeding bears. People can't help themselves. They got to get their picture on Facebook. They got to get that awesome footage or whatever. And it's something that we really struggle with. And I too, I'm excited to see bears. I love to see bears. I've handled hundreds of them. But we got to keep them wild. We got to be, we got to respect the animal and other people that live and may encounter that same animal. So a big problem for us, we still work at. Here's another one, this little cub. We get some orphan cubs every spring. This year was a particularly bad orphan bear cub year for us in Virginia. But somebody found this cub on Highway 23 near the Powell Valley Overlook, where there's a viaduct and a bridge, and there's highway dividers and people going 70 miles an hour. And this guy, not this guy in the picture, but another coworker of his, got out and scrambled in the traffic at rush hour in the morning to grab this cub, and really put himself and other motorists at risk when he should have probably called DGIF and had myself or a game warden come out and get this cub and deal with it safely. So that happens a lot. A lot of folks will keep a cub, isn't it cute? But suddenly it'll start biting you and scratching you and turn into a wild animal again. So we have to sometimes go in and confiscate cubs like this. So I'm going to end with probably my all-time favorite bear proofing system I've ever seen. Hopefully the video works for everybody. But I love this. Some Halloween store has this motion activated evil clown thing, and I just thought that was hilarious. But something I realized that I missed as we go through here, there was let's see here, had to do with hunting seasons. Here we go. I don't think I showed this slide for whatever reason, but this shows and this is sort of bouncing back, but this shows the hunter harvest in Virginia since 1928. We've, again, different from Kentucky, we've always had bears in little pockets around the state of Virginia, little isolated areas. But around about the 90s, 2000s is when the population really increased, and we offered more hunting seasons and continue to do so to try to help manage the population. But last year in 2019, Virginia hunters harvested 3,540 bears, which was by far our state record. 2017, when we instituted the early 3-day season, was the previous record at about 2,800 bears. So we really, over 600 bears more than our previous record. So a huge bear harvest season for us last year. So I know for folks that are concerned about bear numbers and bear population, we keep adding hunting opportunity to try to manage bear numbers and so on. But with that, does anybody have questions? I know hopefully I didn't confuse anybody or mislead folks that are in Kentucky. That was one of my concerns tonight.
Looks like some of the main questions that people are asking are about these reasonably priced and readily available sources of bear-proof garbage containers.
Yes. So reasonably priced, that is that's a tough one. Here is the Toter bear can. I mean, I'll just tell you, I spent $170 on this can. But again, my problems are solved. I don't have any more problems. It's a sigh of relief for me as a father and a pet owner, and we've got other attractants and things here. We live in a dense neighborhood and right in the town of Wise. So it's well worth the money for me.
Do you know if they have a retrofit? Because I have that Toter can, but I don't have the bear-proof lid. Do they?
Yes, if you go to our website, which is DGIF.Virginia spelled out .gov, that's DGIF.Virginia spelled out .gov. You'll probably see on our front page, because of the time of year, you'll see a link to having bear problems or bear conflicts or something like that. If you click on that link, it will take you to our bear page on our website, and there are some instructions for maybe $15 or $20 in hardware at your hardware store. You can retrofit and bear proof your own curbside rollout like that.
Very good. Okay, so how does an electric fence, how hot does an electric fence need to be to deter bears?
Great question. So for me, like if I buy electric fencing for us to use to sort of loan folks or something like that, and I have a number of kits that I do loan out to folks until they can get their own, or until we get the issue fixed. But for electric fencing, when you go to your farm store, hopefully the Energizer that you are looking at is rated in joules. Joules are kind of like, think of it as like horsepower and the actual shocking power of the Energizer. And we try to get at least 0.5 joules or better. If you can get a 0.7 or a 1 joule or better, you're better off yet. But 0.5 works really well. Not all Energizer companies rate in joules, so that's kind of a tough one. But I would recommend, trying to order or purchase an Energizer that has a joule rating of 0.5 or better.
Is there any issue with those inside city limits? There's been questions before about whether or not city zoning and ordinances and such are an issue with that electric inside city limits.
Not that I'm aware of, at least in Virginia. I've not come across that. But we have, a lot of folks use electric fencing for even dogs, horses, because some of our towns and stuff allow horses in town. We do have a couple of the convenience centers or dump sites in Wise County. We have electric fence put up. So that's a public use site that we have electric fencing, and we just hang warning signs. We've put it up at schools before around cafeteria dumpsters. So in terms of, ordinances or anything like that, I would, if that's a question, I would definitely, call the city or town or whatever where you live. But for the most part, I haven't run across that, but it could be an issue.
Okay, we've got another question here, and I'm going to expand on it a little bit. They ask, why do bears like trail cameras? We had one eat ours, and I would add to this almost anything plastic in the woods. They seem to love plastic. Why is that?
I couldn't tell you, but plastic, any petroleum based product has some sort of odor or something that bears really are interested in. That's definitely an issue. For us as a department, and for me as a hunter, I have to put a bear box around the metal bear boxes around my camera. I have the same issue, but that's very common. Also the batteries, the different, not just the plastic outer shell of the camera, but also the guts of it. There's probably chemicals and things that bear is smelling. Also, they smell us and they're curious and they see something. Maybe they've been past that tree 100 times and they're like, hey, wait a minute, what is that? And just out of curiosity, they'll look at stuff. I've had other folks tell me that, a lot of times at least for me, when I open up a camera, especially if it's been out for a while, and especially in the cooler nights of the year, like during hunting season especially, insects will go in there to hide and to stay warm. And a lot, can't help but wonder if those bears are smelling those insects too as a natural food source. So there's a lot of things that kind of contribute to that. But yes, if you're going to put if you live in bear country, which we all do, that's another thing to invest in is a bear box around a metal bear box around your camera.
Any other questions? I think, did I get them all?
Looks like there was one from Woody. He said, I've heard that bears are nomadic and that the bear that hit your garbage one night is not the same one from a couple nights ago. Is this true?
Potentially. I mean, obviously, when a bear gets a food reward, they have a real good memory. And because of the way their life strategy is, you know, they have to eat enough in 6 to 8 or 10 months to last them for 12. So they really remember where feeding is good, whether that's your garbage can or a good white oak stand up in the forest. So they do return to consistent, high reward, low risk food sources. You know, absolutely, if a bear gets into your garbage, it might be back tomorrow night, it might be back 6 months from now, or maybe next year if the natural food sources are bad. So it really just depends on the individual bear. They do range a large area. And, you know, tonight I talked more about conflict prevention and didn't really get into a deep dive into bear biology or behavior, which I'm happy to do. If you guys want me to come back, we can do another session more about biology of the animal, which is fascinating. But it's absolutely true. They cover a huge area. Male bears especially, they range for miles and miles. And we do have a lot of bears on the landscape. So even, you know, and that's something I get asked a lot, like, why don't you just trap and relocate the bear if it gets into something or causes people problems? But we just have so many bears. If we relocate the bear, it's going to continue its behavior somewhere else. And that doesn't do anything to help prevent the next bear that's going to come in and find your garbage or your whatever. So relocating bears, we do occasionally, but extremely rarely. We rarely trap a bear unless it's a real legit safety concern or something significant going on. But yes, they have a tremendous memory. They do cover huge areas, but they do remember if they get a good food reward, they will be back eventually, as long as they're surviving.
Shad, I think I saw somebody trying to raise their hand in the image. Maybe they couldn't. Kristen, did you have a question? You're not hearing you.
They got the ability to unmute themselves, correct, Jeremy?
Yes. It appears she's unmuted right now.
Yeah, she's not showing that she's muted, but not hearing anything. Kristen, are you able to type into the chat box at all?
I think it'd be great to have the talk, the biology talk.
Sounds good.
Phil, you set that up.
10-4, we'll try. Kristen, we're still not hearing you. If you want to email that to me, I can forward it to Seth if you'd like. Sorry about that. I don't know. It's beyond our ability to figure out what's going on. And I can't read lips.
Sign language, maybe.
Sorry about that. Any other questions?
Got a dry erase board that she can hold up to the screen.
Yeah, I thought about asking that, but I don't see any.
Oh, she is writing something.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
If it says call for help,
Okay, here we go.
what is the website? Is that
Okay,
it?
I put the website in the chat. The website, I presume, for the Virginia Bear. It's actually in the chat. It is dgif.virginia.gov/wildlife/bear. That sound right, Seth?
I think so, yes.
dgif.virginia.gov/wildlife/bear.
All right, she got it.
All right. You're welcome.
Had to go old school with that technology problem.
I like that.
Any other questions?
Seth, thank you very much.
You
Yes,
guys
thanks,
are
Seth.
you're welcome.
Seth, great job.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Hopefully it won't be another 15 years. Good to see you.
You too, Jeremy.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We've got some really good topics next week. As you know, we've gone down to 2 days starting next week, Tuesday and Thursday. And Phil, Shad, y'all want to cover what's going on next week? I know Tuesday, I think, is equine.
Yes, Tuesday will be Emily Woods, who's our like I mentioned earlier, she's our new intern. She's going to be talking about equine basics for brand new horse owners. So whether you're a 4-H'er or an adult who's just entered the world of equine, she'll be going over the basics. And my memory is gone as far as Thursday. What's happening Thursday?
Thursday,
That's garden insects.
Okay.
Garden Insects, Dr. Rick Besson. And we have one more question. It seems to be down here. Margarita Rose asked you, the klaxon or marine horn is effective to put out? That's a question.
And I'm sorry, Jeremy, could you repeat that?
Klaxon or marine horn, is it effective to put out?
I couldn't say. I've not heard that done, so I couldn't answer that one.
Okay. All right, everybody. Good to see everybody. Hopefully we'll see everybody back Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and everybody have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you.
Thanks, Seth.
See you.
See you, everybody.
Everybody.